of the hot topics for discussion in relation to tax and tax planning and the impact that change has on financial planning strategy is the drop in the dividend allowance that will take place from the 6th of April 2023. Now that drop is quite material, isn't it? It drops from £2,000. Remember, it started life as £5,000, but it dropped to £2,000, and then it drops to £1,000. It drops to £1,000 from the 6th of April next year. And then in the 6th of April in the year following that, 2024, it drops to £500. Now that quite simply means that more of the dividends that you receive will bear tax. Not, of course, if they fall within the £500 eventual limit, but effectively, if you're receiving £2,000 of dividends tax-free now, half of them will be subject to tax next year, and then another 50% of that £1,000 subject to tax the year after. That's quite a big bite into the taxation of the dividend that you receive, and of course that will mean you receive less net dividends. What does that dividend drop, that dividend allowance drop, mean in relation to people, the people that are affected? Well, the reduction in the dividend tax allowance next year, 2023-24, that's the next tax year, will affect 3,235,000 taxpayers. And next year, the year after that, when it drops to £500, will affect 4.4 million, 4,405,000 taxpayers. That's a lot of taxpayers with whom you don't need to have a conversation with all of them unless you have all of them as your clients. But basically, there will be more of your clients who currently receive dividends tax-free or who receive a chunk of their dividends tax-free who will be paying tax on their dividends in the next year, in the years to come, at those rates of tax that we all know and love for basic rate, higher rate, and additional rate, effectively 8.75%, 33.25%, and just over 39%. Those rates of tax are the tax rates that will apply to dividends once they exceed the annual dividend allowance. And if that dividend allowance is falling, there's going to be more dividends subject to tax, which means that more clients should be interested in a discussion as to how they could shield themselves from that increase legitimately. And that's where financial planning and careful use of wrappers comes in to play. Of course, the obvious wrappers to consider are pensions and ISAs, because they provide that tax freedom inside the wrapper, protection from dividend taxation. And also, of course, let's not forget the wrapper that an investment bond can provide. And in relation to dividends, the UK bond in particular, because not only will you have all dividends with no limit, subject to no tax inside the UK bond, of course, you need to manage that final tax liability when you withdraw the money out and hopefully make a gain. But you have the ability to defer, of course, and all the time you're deferring tax on that dividend, the build-up inside the bond will be better for you, especially if you are going to be paying tax on that dividend, and especially if you're paying tax at those higher rates of tax. So the dividend tax allowance reduction, I think, should prompt more discussions about the power of the tax no-brainers of pensions and ISAs, but also prompt maybe a few more discussions on the potential power of the tax sheltering and tax administration, tax management capabilities and qualities of an investment bond, and in particular, the UK investment bond, because of course it carries that basic rate credit for when you finally cash the bond in and make a gain.